Hi, everybody. I'm back um, with a little video. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I just wanted to address the time that we're currently evolving into. I'm recording this on the 5th of October, just the day after Mars was conjunct the South Node, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. And just for those who are new to me, my name is Susan. I am a consulting astrologer, and I use the tropical zodiac. Sometimes I use Indian terminology, Indian references, whether it be nakshatras or Rahu Ketu, for example, which for me is a reminder of their true energy, which is not always benevolent. Anyway, we had just yesterday, as I'm recording this, 4th of October, we had Mars conjunct the South Node. I did already mention that in my video leading up to the eclipses. So have a look at the intro to that. And also I posted something briefly in the community section of my channel. I don't think a lot of you look at those community posts though, so I thought I'd better do a little video as well. And particularly so because I've had a lot of clients this week who are really struggling. Um, we are, as humanity, also really struggling with these really difficult times that are quite they feel quite existential and very destabilizing psychologically and materially for sure. And that's what I wanted to address here. So the way that I use astrology is to help people grow into their lives and recognize what is the most important aspect of their lives. And it's going to sound really trite to say it, but we're not here to have a house and a lovely car and a beautiful partner and our children doing like these marvelous things that we can boast about online and things like that. This is a diversion from our purpose here. And a lot of times when people come to me with their real pain, what they're coming to me with is these life sort of day-to-day mundane things. It can be in the moment, it can feel really life-shattering, having marriage issues, work issues, and so on. But if we really start to use these what I'm going to call pressures, the astrological pressures to evolve through our lives, we can become incredibly powerful and resilient. And so this is what I wanted to just address here. That's always what I'm trying to encourage in you, in all of us, and to really help you to ride through what in the moment can feel really difficult. So let's have a look first at so this Mars South Node conjunction is now separating. It's 3 degrees apart as of the time that Mars squares Pluto. So as I'm talking about this now today on the 5th of October, it is still active. And it's active really until this moment, until the 9th of October. Mars is then separating from this square, but it's then deepening its square, and this is the exact square with Pluto, which is currently retrograde. And so Pluto is at 2753 of Capricorn, Mars at 2753 of Libra, and this is happening overnight on the 9th. So and this is so 1:45 a.m. in Universal Time, if you are in North or South America, that's going to be on the 8th. So you can adjust, not that it's going to happen exactly at that particular moment in terms of how you manifest that, but or how things might feel for you, but it's just useful to know. So nonetheless, between this time, I'm going to call it right from the beginning of October, pretty much through till the eclipses, we're in a really intense moment of change. And it's a kind of a change that is that puts pressure on us all. And yet you can find also details about that in your chart based on the degree points of the planets. When we look at these numbers connected to the planets, that's the degree. So 27 degrees of Libra and 53 arc minutes of a degree is Mars's degree point, for example. And if you have planets in those signs or in any air sign or square those signs, like Pluto is right now, Capricorn, that will affect you more personally. And so you'll just need to see your own chart to do that. And even if you don't know your chart, you can take these as a kind of a general statement of how to experience whatever difficulties you're going through right now. Currently, Mars is not only in conjunction to the South Node, but also opposing Eris. So Mars in Libra already is having a difficult time connecting in relationship, having a difficult time in terms of trying to find peace and calm and resolution, perhaps, in relationship. And then opposing Eris, it comes from a feeling of being not seen or not witnessed or not taken seriously or not or humiliated or taken for granted, for example. And so there can be this immense frustration that is building both collectively and individually at this time. And then what's challenging that, especially particularly on the 9th, but keep in mind that as I'm speaking, this is already there, is this Pluto square. So Pluto in square to Mars is really a big, big change in direction. It's a big, Mars is always about how you act. It's what you do. It's your goals, if you like. And Pluto squaring that is going to require an adjustment to goals. And the ideal is to have a sense of what is already not working in your life and face it. Just recognize it. This doesn't work any longer. This doesn't work for me, or this doesn't work in general, or this attempt that I'm making for this or another thing in my life, it's just not working. And when you start to at least release the attachment to that outcome, it allows you to move into a new outcome or a new way of approaching an outcome. And this is really important. When we talk about Pluto, we're talking about a need for really its root and branch change. This is the only solution with such a tension with Pluto square Mars, for example, is is to surrender to it and say, yep, it has to change. I don't know what this is going to look like, but this has to change. We're always going to be in the next year and a half moving in the direction of Aries because the North Node is there. So look in your chart and see what Aries is representing in your chart, which house that's in. But in a general sense, Aries as a sign is representing ourselves and our own actions. Aries is represented by Mars, which is why Mars in opposition to Aries is not so happy in Libra, because Mars rules Aries. And so it's about the actions that we take. And this is the important thing. A lot of times people want change. They want astrology to give them something. It's like, what does my chart tell me about what I'm about to receive or what am I entitled to in this lifetime? The universe owes you nothing. We come here screaming and naked and on an equal footing with all other life. And the universe owes us nothing. The idea that we should have something, whether that be material or emotional comfort or whatever, and somehow we deserve that is part of our suffering. That is literally the one of the descriptions of why we suffer is because we are attached to a way of feeling or a way of looking at things or a thing itself or a person itself. So we want to understand these are regular shakeups in our worldview, if you like. Things like Pluto squares and the nodes, especially shifting. That's shaking up our worldview. It's shaking up our complacency or shaking up our expectations. And the more expectations that you have, which is not to say you shouldn't have goals. Goals are what we're aiming to achieve, but expectations are about outcomes. And if you expect outcomes, and then you don't get them, you're living in a cycle of constant elation and disappointment, elation and disappointment. And then you start to feel resentful. And this is where we want to really practice that spiritual concept of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean not doing anything. It means recognizing that you were not doing anything in the first place, that you are not the energy that's beating your heart. You are not the thing that is keeping you alive. You are not the thing that introduced you to your partner. You didn't do that. These things happen. And then we respond to these things. And you can say, yes, I manifested my partner. I manifested this or that. Well, if that's true always, then just go ahead, manifest what you need in this moment. There should be no more suffering in your life. But when you start to understand, for example, with this Venus in conjunct Pluto, that we don't, sorry, that's my dog barking at somebody coming in. We don't always get the thing that we want. And we have to acknowledge that sometimes we are just deceiving ourselves to the point that we're going to suffer even more. So we want to understand as much as possible that Pluto is not trying to destroy us. It's trying to destroy our notions of what life is about, trying to destroy our sense of what it is that we're here for, and to make it real. Pluto is all about truth. It's all about overcoming fear. It's overcoming things that are not real, not true. And that doesn't have anything to do with stripping away what is yours to have, for example. It doesn't have anything to do with cheating you out of a marriage or out of a job or anything like that. That's not the role of these energies. It is to wake you up to what you're here for. So you really want to understand that a lot of the time our suffering is based on this attachment to the material world at the expense of our personal growth. And I know that many people are going through really difficult times. Many of you are consulting with me at, as I mentioned, at times that are incredibly difficult in your life. And I sympathize with that. Life is hard. That's one of the things we have to understand about life, but it also has solutions. This is, if you want to think of it from the Buddhist point of view, the Four Noble Truths are that life entails suffering. If you were born, you will suffer. That's just given. And the suffering is something we are aware of. We know why there is a cause of suffering. And the third noble truth is that, well, we can understand how to recognize the causes of suffering. It's greed, attachment, aversion, and obsession with things is one of these causes of suffering. And then the fourth noble truth is how to overcome that. And that is through training the mind away from attachment and greed and all of these things that we think we're clinging to, which have no reality, and so on and so on. And mindfulness is part of that, part of the Eightfold Path to alleviate suffering. Right livelihood. Are you doing the right job? Are you doing the right thing? Are you doing the thing that you could, that brings out the best not only in you but in your community? If you think back in history, it's only very, very recent, like maybe the last 100 years or so, that anyone had a sense that they were owed a job from somebody else, that they would show up and that somebody else should provide them with a job. And maybe it's even more recent than that. But prior to that, people just saw a need and they acted upon it. That might have been inherited. It might have been a role that their parents already had, especially the father to son. It may have been something about, planting food or harvesting food. It may have been something to do with cooking food. It may have been something to do with raising children, educating children. There was a need and there was a response to a need. And this has always, through eternity, been how people have sustained themselves. Now we're living in an era where we have this almost delusional idea that a job is something that comes to us and that we have to be paid by somebody else to do something. It's not always true. Maybe that'll work for some people, but it's no longer really working for most people. Equally, if you just start to recognize that you do have skills and talents and that you do have a calling, that you do have something uh, calling you out of yourself, then you can start to develop that even in the context of already working in another job. And more especially if you're not working in a job, then start that as well. Start expanding your sense of what you're here for, what you can do. It will always come from a place of sharing and reaching out for other people. The other aspect of this pain or this emotional tension that can be there is a feeling of just and this I'm going to generalize now to our leaders, our dear leaders. I see Mars on the South Node in Libra and it's sextiling Venus and it sextiles Venus, by the way, for the entire time building up to the eclipse. Um, I see that as a dereliction of responsibility on the part of our leaders, a dereliction of what you could call duty or the law, the respect for the law, the letter of the law, where we're no longer able to rely entirely on the law as we've defined it in so-called modern times, let's say the last couple of hundred years. And now it's like the wild, wild west, and it's quite destabilizing. And so this is another aspect that we need to come back to with the Aries North Node, which is to rectify that and to recognize we have a role to play. We have action that needs to be taken that is part of the Pluto demolition, let's call it, or transformation of authority. It's big government, big industry. It's the way that people govern themselves in general, and what we consider to be our ambitions and goals in a very personal sense, but also collectively. And so, what do we need to do about that? How do we need to hold people to account? I think this is something that is a part of our times, the times that we are living in. Definitely, this is not an easy task, but it's something that needs to be done by all of us. Uh, and that's part of this energy of the Pluto square Mars, which is a confrontation potentially a physical confrontation that can be about military intervention. And now Pluto square Mars can be both a kind of inspired action in terms of what needs to change and therefore this sudden, quick, impulsive action, or it can just be simple random violence that can also happen. It has to be said, these are not easy energies. It's not, let's not pretend that this is all beautiful and going to be really fine in the end. You know, this is not a Disney film, this is real life. And this is why it becomes more urgent that we actually start to consider what actions we need to take. And based on what are we going to be moving ourselves forward in life. Let me see what else I wanted to say here, because I've got a couple of charts I wanted to show you here. Pluto is squaring the moon here at the same time that Mars is squaring Pluto. Now, Jupiter rather, squaring Jupiter from Taurus is squaring the moon in Leo at the same time as Mars is squaring Pluto. And the moon is also sextiling the sun, which is helpful. Venus is sextiling Mars, which is helpful and constructive. But nonetheless, it's Jupiter squaring the moon can have us biting off more than we can chew. It can have us overreach, and that overreach can have something to do with that Mars square Pluto, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, for one example, or meaning that we just take those steps way too far and we're no longer considering what's also good about what we have. And the desire to start again is so powerful that we eradicate things that are also working or continue to function for us. Reflect on that in your everyday life. Reflect on that in the collective experience that you're having, that we're all having. Jupiter squaring the moon also can tend to be over emotional, and the moon in Leo is a bit of a drama queen. So is Venus in Leo, and she's right there too. And we also have a discontented Lilith in Leo as well, conjunct Venus. And that Lilith is squaring Uranus. So very impulsive energy here, very dynamic and impulsive. So slow things down and start to recognize where you might be acting in a way that's not in your best interest. Now, Chiron is opposing the sun, and there we can find an energy of potential self-sabotage through the things that we do out of an immature awareness of self or an immature awareness of our role. Now, we can also take the sun collectively as our leaders, and the sun opposite Chiron suggests also that the leaders themselves are suffering, potentially going to self-destruct through their own sabotage and their own deeds. But the Chiron opposing the sun can be an incredibly uh, powerful agent of transformation. It's not exact yet at the Pluto square Mars, at Mars square in Pluto, rather, but it will be in the couple of days to come. And that will include the Venus ingress and also the Mars ingress. So let's have a look at those. I'm going to just now pull Venus out because she's the next one to change signs. She's going into Virgo. And that's the same day, about an half an hour later, not even a half an hour later, Venus will enter into Virgo. So it's effectively saying that as Mars is squaring Pluto, because it still very much is, Venus then ingresses. Now, a planetary ingress is extremely powerful. When Venus shifts her energy, especially after a 4 month stay in Leo, we're going to feel something shift. There's going to be something different. Now, this is where we can start to use this energy to our advantage, where we can start to recognize that something's different here. We can do something different. Whatever we do with Venus in opposition to Saturn is going to be durable. It's going to be long lasting. And the potential feeling around this can be that there's just no more it's not working anymore. The relationship or the desire nature or the things that we're doing, whether it be with regards to money or our belongings or our feelings and emotions, our connections with other people, it's not working anymore. And Saturn puts that pressure in opposition to Venus in that whole period of time building up to the eclipse on the 14th, where Saturn puts pressure on Venus to do something, fix this, make this better, make it real. Soon, very soon, we've got Saturn. Once Mars ingresses into Scorpio, we've got Saturn in a trine to that Mars. We'll see that in a moment. But this is also going to help this shift. It's going to help the change that is required to build something new into your desire nature, into the things that you want to accomplish, and into your relationships themselves. So Venus uh, in Mercury ruled Virgo is not terribly happy. Just like Mars in Libra, which she's still ruling for now, it's not very effective because it's ruled by Venus, and Mars is not about Venusian things. Mars is about action and separation and about sorting things out right now and not trying to be friendly or nice. And Venus in Mercury is not her in her exaltation place, for example, in Pisces, which is very tolerant and very open-minded and very easygoing. Venus in Virgo is very much about looking for what's not working. Now, if we use this consciously, we can use this to our advantage. If we don't, we can also just feel discontent. People who have, for example, Venus in Virgo, especially if she's afflicted in any way, potentially opposite Saturn, can have difficulties feeling genuine contentment just for the sake of, enjoyment, difficulties just being happy. And then we have to question that. So what does happiness mean for me? If you can't be happy in this exact moment, then you will never be happy. And my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, used to say, you have everything you need in this moment, or he said it a little more poetically, this moment contains everything you need to be happy. You already have what you need to be happy right now. And that is because our happiness doesn't come from external things. It does not come from our life situation. And yes, I am sure I'm going to hear in the comments that people are having very, very serious difficulties in life. And I have no doubt about it. I'm hearing from you all. I'm speaking to you as well. Some of you are having extreme challenges right now, but it's about digging deep. That's what Pluto is asking us to do. Dig deep. Pluto square Mars allows us to have this intensity of seeking, intensity of a drive um, that allows this deep dive. When Mars moves into Scorpio, we're going to have that even more. And so this deep dive is coming into a sense of what am I here for? What is life all about? And really, really going deep in. And what am I grieving? What am I upset about? Is that actually worth me being upset? Now, again, I understand many of you are going through extremely difficult things. Some of you might be going through health issues. Mental health issues are rife right now. It's an absolute, uh, we're in a crisis as human beings. We are in a crisis. Even the animals around us are in a crisis psychologically because our world is so incredibly tense and stressed and disruptive. And so we have to find compassion for ourselves. We have to find compassion for other people as well. Venus in Virgo is helpful in that sense because it's about looking for how we can simplify or purify ourselves, especially in opposition to Saturn. Get right back to the bare essentials. Purification of the self is not coming from a place of judgment of this is good and this is bad. It's to say what is working for me to bring me to a place of connection, to bring me to a place of good health, to bring me to a place of functionality, what's working for me. For example, in Virgo, in this particular chart, Venus is in the second house as well. And Virgo anyway represents health with regards to our day-to-day habits and our food and the things that we take in terms of our daily news cycle or any other information that we take in. And we can understand that there's certain types of food that actually make us depressed. There's certain types of food that actually make us agitated. Pay attention to all of these things. Be mindful of what food is doing to you. Sugar, caffeine, alcohol, um, carbohydrates in the form of bread and refined foods that just make you dull and lethargic. They are anti-nutrients that drain your energy, drain your capacity to cope. And it matters. It really matters. And Venus and Virgo can help you to find that courage, especially sextiling Mars this week, to find that courage to make a difference, make a change, make something work better. Opposing Saturn, that is also going to be something potentially lasting, something that you can really work with. So this is something that we owe ourselves. You know, we just like I said, the universe doesn't owe us anything. We owe it to ourselves to do as much as we can to stay well for the people around us, for ourselves to be able to enjoy and live through this life, whatever that life brings us, and to recognize that life is short, it's fragile, and this could be your very last moment. In the Buddhist teachings, the idea is that the way to live life is as if this were your very last moment. And would you want this quality of life at the very end of your life? Would you want this to be the feeling at the very end of your life? Or can you just this moment change this feeling? Give yourself just enough of a shift, just a teeny little shift that allows you to feel better about this moment, about your life. This is your life that you can live through. This is the one shot you get with this particular configuration. And you owe it to yourself. And this is that North Node in Aries. It's about what action we take. What do we want to do? Where have we had enough? Eris opposing Mars in Libra. Where have we let ourselves down? Chiron in Aries. Where have we allowed ourselves to have a feeling of insecurity or a feeling of insignificance that is not supporting us at all, and can also be something that brings everybody else down in the process. The Chiron opposing the Sun can really show us where the capacity to heal is necessary and where we can draw on that. So I want to just come now to the Mars ingress. I'm not talking, by the way, about the Mercury ingress that happened already on the 4th. So that's already there. Mercury is now well into the sign because he's cruising really fast through Libra. And so we're not going to look at the Mercury ingress, but the Venus and Mars ingress is more vital because that also is these are the planets that rule the north and south nodes. So we want to really keep following the condition of those planets. So now, as Mars is now ingressing Scorpio, it's sign of rulership. Now we've got a very different Mars, a very different energy, a very different quality just before we get to the eclipses on the 12th of October. Remember, the eclipses are on the 14th. Venus is still sextiling that Mars. Of course, wherever Venus is, she's going to be ruling the south node. Wherever Mars is, he's ruling the north node. Now we have a north node ruled by a very strong Mars in its own sign. Modern astrologers also give Pluto to Scorpio. I don't give rulership to the outer planets. I use them absolutely because they really give vital clues, and there's certainly a resonance with Scorpio. But I give the rulership to Mars with Scorpio, and it tends to give a very explicit idea of what's going on in the chart. Now we have a very strong Mars just in the very first degree of Scorpio, and that's going to start to change the dynamic here because now Mars is exactly trining Saturn. Things are now changing because we have figured it out in the week before the eclipse, starting, let's say, I want to say from the 4th of October, or let's say the 10 days before the eclipse, or even before. We have been looking at what's wrong. We've been feeling what's wrong. We've been feeling this pressure building up. We've been feeling this frustration at not being able to deal with it or not knowing what to do. I've seen things around us being taken care of in ways that are inadequate or irresponsible by the people who should be in charge. And now we're in a situation where we have a Mars in a very strong dignity, still squaring a Pluto, which is now direct. So Pluto stations direct on the 12th. Did I write the time? Hang on a minute. Did I write the time? I didn't write the time. Sorry about that. But nonetheless, Pluto stations and goes direct at the same time that it squared Mars just soon after that. And now we have a very powerful Mars and a much more powerful forward-moving Pluto in a square plus the trine now to that Saturn in Pisces. And this gives us a capacity for change that is our opportunity now. It's the opportunity we have now to say, okay, I get it. I understood the pain. I understood there's my role in this, the North Node ruled by that Mars, my role in this. I understood how I also participated in my suffering. I understand now how I can participate in my release of suffering. And this is where we can really find the gold in this energy. So as we're building up towards the eclipse, know that this pressure is going to find relief. You're going to find a capacity to act. Mars is very strong in Scorpio, very strategic, very strong in terms of what it feels is righteous, in terms of what is true. Scorpio is about the truth, it's about unveiling the truth. This could also be a period collectively, for example, where truths are really revealed and things come about in ways that might be shocking. Mars squaring Pluto can be shocking. And that will bring the shift that is necessary. We have a couple of fingers of God or Yods as well as we go through this period of time. Actually, I'm not going to go through them, but just to say that we do have this pressure. The Yods are pointing towards Neptune in particular, towards Uranus also earlier in the week, towards Saturn. And all of this energy is pointing the way to what it is that needs attention, what it is that needs changing. Interesting that those are all the outer planets, and those are the ones that give us long-term guidance. And so when we look at, for example, Saturn in a trine, rather Mars in a trine to Saturn, we always take the fastest moving planet and apply it to the slower moving planet. So Mars in a trine to Saturn is really showing us what we need to do to take steady long-term action and in the direction of that Uranian energy, which has been building over many years now in Taurus, about changing our values, changing our relationship to money, changing our relationship to our resources, to natural resources, and then to Neptune in Pisces, which has also been there for a very long time, which is also about changing our sense of what is real, what is illusion, what can we rely upon. Now, Pluto is moving away from a sextile with Neptune. It remains in sextile to Neptune for another few years. We're not out of the woods yet. That's already been about 60, 70 years. We're not out of the woods yet, but still, for now, the pressure backs off. And so the clarity is possible. We can see more clearly what it is that's really going on. And I think there could be a few revelations that might come to us collectively, or at the very least in our individual lives, that we're going to be able to act upon. So let me just go through my notes to make sure that I'm telling you what I wanted to say. Well, one of the things about the Venus changing signs, I think that could be, and Venus sextiling Mars, Venus opposing Saturn is very much a message, keeping in mind that Venus is ruling this south node, Venus now in Mercury, ruling the south node, especially from the 9th of October. I think there might be some resolution or some more let's say, energy behind what I was reading about here with the American CBDC, which is the digital currency that the Fed or the Federal Reserve was trying to impose on the US. And there has been a bill moving through Congress. It's not signed into law, but it's extremely well supported. And that bill is opposing that. And I see that in the Saturn Venus. I will be doing a video shortly on the US and some transits that the US is going through, and especially with this eclipse as well. But just keep that in mind, because I think we've had this crisis over the last year or so in terms of control, abuse of power, and now with this pressure here with Mars squaring Pluto, with Venus opposing Saturn, Mars now very, very strong. Venus ruled by Mercury, which is also ruled by Venus, meaning they have a mutual reception, which is very supportive, very helpful. I think there could be a really good outcome. By good, I'm going to show you my colors, which is that I don't want to see a digital currency that is ruled by a non-elected body. And that can control the motions and the movements and even the ideology of the people who hold that money. So yeah, so I think this could be very good in the sense that there would not be an agreement for this digital currency, at least in the form that it's being presented. Venus herself is going to be continuing to rise in the eastern sky now. She's the morning star since she left the shadow. Now, remember, on the 7th, 8th of October, she moved through the 28th degree of Leo, which is where she was when she stationed retrograde back on the 23rd of July. So you can go back to that period of time and have a look at what's been going on in your life and in general since then. And so now we can see Venus. She's visible now. She's far enough away from the sun. And she's visible. And if you, on the 8th and 9th of October, which I think is this weekend, so the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, if you go out in the early, early morning, you can actually see Venus rising with the crescent moon, which should make for, not the crescent moon, the waning moon. So it's the moon, just the sliver of the moon that we will see just before the eclipse, which is a new moon. So if you are into planet watching or taking photographs, that would be a beautiful thing to look for. So the willingness to compromise is there with Venus sextiling Mars, and the understanding of what is needed to do is there with the Venus in the mutual reception with Mercury. And I think we are going to have a feeling as we approach the eclipse that we then know what we're ready to change, what we want to change, and we can actually then experience the eclipses as a really welcome shift. We never can predict. I'm not great at predictive astrology, to be honest, but we never can predict the outcome of an eclipse, particularly because things are by their nature unstable. It's just not something that we can really rely on in any way. And This is no different, except that we can already now start to look at things that we want to modify, things that we want to change, and lean into that. Let me just quickly look there about. Oh yeah, I wrote a little pep talk here. See if I can translate that to a shorter one. So this, yeah, especially with that Chiron opposing the sun, because remember it's opposing the sun essentially all the way through to the eclipse now. From the time I'm speaking here, all the way through the eclipse, we've got Chiron opposing the sun. So think in terms of personal transformation. How can I change from the inside out? If you're not clear how to change, go towards your sun in your natal chart, the sun. The sun in your natal chart shows you your sense of purpose, what brings you joy, what brings you a sense of value, personal worthiness, personal self-worth. Go towards the energy of your sun, find out what it means for you in your chart, embrace it. And when you have any doubt, go towards that and really lean into your sun. Um, and that transformation is, of course, optional. You can also surrender and despair. That's another, meaning give up, not surrender in the sense of the Plutonian surrender, but just give up and despair. That's another Chiron thing, which is about feeling a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm disappointed in myself. I wish I had done this. Forget it. You have the option now. You take that level of consciousness one notch higher and say, I have a choice. I can submerge myself in these regrets and despair and feel that I have nothing left to do or to live for, or I can just transform. And even if it's your last breath, in that way, consciously transforming will give meaning and quality to your life. So, where do you sabotage your life? Is it something that you're conscious of, or is it something you need to bring more conscious awareness to? Where do you do your own sabotaging? Where do you sit around and say, I wish I could, I should, they should, they? If you're talking about them all the time, then you're not doing the North Node in Aries. We've got to practice that. We've got a year and a half to work through this. So think in terms of changing your goals. Mars squaring Pluto, you will one way or another have to change your goals. There's just no getting around this. Some of you will have to change everything and have a sense that your whole life is shifting, and other people will just have to simply reorient. So it depends again on where you are, how you've been living your life, and also how that's affecting your chart. But one way or another, we have to change our goals collectively as well. And the only stress that comes through change is when we resist it. So remember that the resistance to the change is what brings the stress. It's what brings anxiety. So allow yourself to surrender, get down and be humble. Get down on the earth, or quite literally lay your belly down on the earth, put your knees down on the earth and be humble. And realize that there's a bigger situation that we know nothing about that's going on, and we're just participating in it. We're just a little drip of it. So only the ego can be hurt. Only the ego, the notion of who I am as a person, an individual, separate self, only that can be hurt. The rest, not at all. Of course, the physical body can have its own suffering or health issues, but who you are can never be damaged or harmed. So look for issues of control and compulsive behavior that's unhelpful. We often point fingers of blame. Remember, when you point those fingers of blame, you've got three pointing right back at you. So making sure that you're aware, what is my role in all of this? That's the Aries North Node. What is my role in all of this? So if you understand that unconscious behavior or your compulsive way of being, whether that be emotionally or in terms of your own actions and so on, then you can see to what extent you're not participating in the flow of life. you're separate from it. You're cutting yourself off from it. And that's why you feel so bad. That's why you feel stressed. That's why you feel lonely. It's why you feel that that nothing's working out for you because you're trying to control things when really what it is you want to try and live in harmony with things. Um, so one of the things I learned years and years and years ago, I did a course called the Landmark Forum 30 years ago. And one thing that I learned there, day one probably, that I really never forgot was we don't know what we don't know. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind. We very often we have this idea that we have all the information we need to make this decision or to judge people or to decide this or that is the right thing. But there's such a vast amount of knowledge and such a vast amount of things to understand in the highest sense of any situation. You name a situation, it's going to be there full of unknowns, full of things that you can never understand and never know. The mechanisms, the workings of things, the way that we come together, what you could call karma, we can't know. It's not knowable by the human mind. And so that requires humility. It requires us to step back and say, I could be wrong. My teacher, again, Thich Nhat Hanh, used to say, are you sure? I have that as a calligraphy in my office. Are you sure? Beautiful way of practicing. Every time you come to a definite judgment or conclusion or condemnation of something or someone, just ask the question, am I sure? So some things may be revealed to us, especially with that Pluto square Mars. Some things may come to the fore, and some things we may never know. Some things will be hidden forever, and we don't get to choose. Keeping in mind also in terms of the human knowing, in terms of information exchange, that this Pluto sextiling Neptune for me, and the influence of Neptune, especially as a yod at this moment, I think is something that, by the way, was in between Venus at the end of Leo and Mars at the end of Libra, pointing to Neptune in Pisces. I think that was this is something that is showing us where we are not being well informed. And part of being well informed is to hold a space for what we don't know, that we don't know. Being well informed doesn't mean turning on the news or reading a particular newspaper and believing what you read in that. So it's always easy to make a quick judgment, a quick assessment of something and think that that's the end of it. But hold that space for not knowing. Hold the space and the humility not to judge. That's literally what every spiritual tradition tells us. Do not condemn your neighbor, do not judge. This is what I was getting at earlier when I was talking about this feeling of lawlessness, this feeling of abdication of the law, abdication of what we used to be able to rely on, the assumption of the presumption of innocence. It's coming from 1,000 years ago. It's in the Magna Carta, which was the document from the 10th century or 11th century England. Saying that a person has to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. We've forgotten all of these things. And yet we would want the same treatment. So follow that golden rule: do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Follow your sun. When you're confused, when you're lost, when you're feeling you don't know what to do, go to the quality of your sun and embrace it fully and act upon that every day. And I wish you the greatest of transformations on the most profound levels that bring you the most deep sense of being alive in this time. We need people to be open and aware at this time. We need people to recognize that we are all here, all one, all together. The more that we can be there for each other, the easier this will be. And so thanks for listening if you've come this far, and I will see you in the next video.